Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial series. In this one I'll be showing you how to use Redux in your application. So the aim of this series is for you to have a good understanding of when you would be needing a state management library like Redux in your application. So I have a simple application over here that just it's kind of like a gamer channel web application. So the approach to this, in this first video, I'll be showing you the problem. We're not going to be doing any Redux here. So the reason behind this is that so many people struggle with learning Redux because of they see Redux as the next step after you learn React. Meanwhile, it's not supposed to be so. Redux is just supposed to be used to manage your states in your application. I know that statement might be contradicting, but what that simply means is that you have to understand why you actually need Redux in your application. So there are some basic applications whereby Redux could be an overkill, or any state management application could be an overkill. So the aim of this video is just for you to, for us to put ourselves in that scenario whereby a state management library would be needed. So enough talk and let me show you. So this is just a very basic application over here, and you can see I used color codes to just differentiate the hierarchy between components. So the screen component is inside the app component and the settings component is inside the screen component. So now we have a very basic state over here called channel name with a value of flying hawk over here. So now, with your knowledge of React.js, if you wanted to pass this state over here down to this navbar over here, what do? You pass it down from the app to the screen to the settings to this over here. So let's just do that and we'll get on with the tutorial. So let me do that quickly. So over here we're in the app components and we have the screens over here. So to do that, I'm just gonna pass channel name. So I've passed it down from app to the screens. So the next place to pass it down would be to settings. So over here in screens, I'll hit Control click and come down to screens. I want to pass it down to settings. So I think I'll just copy and paste. So let me copy. Then I'm passing it down to settings, and to be able to make use of this as a prop, I'm going to use object destructure, and I don't want to write props.channel name, so I'm going to destructure the object to get the value called channel name. Then inside settings, I'll go to settings quickly. Inside settings, we'll do the same thing, channel name, right? Then we pass it to the navbar because this is a navbar inside our settings screen. So I'll just paste the code I copied from the previous place. Then inside the navbar, we do the same thing. Then I'll replace this guy over here with channel name and I'll save. Although we have to remove this, I'll explain why we need this user variable as the tutorial progresses. So I'll save that. Okay, passing user. We'll use this user variable later on. So we can see we have the flying hawk value over here. So let's do a brief recap of what I just did. So over here in the app component, I needed this flying hawk value over here. So what did I do? I passed it down from the app to the screens, from the screens to the settings, from the settings to the content, from the content to the navbar. That is about 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 steps over here. So from app to screens, that's 1, 2, from 3 steps. From app to screens, screens to settings, settings to navbar, to have this value over here. So let's do the same thing. We want to pass this flying hawk over here to the footer. The reason I'm going through all this step is for us to put ourselves in a scenario whereby we would be needing a state management library. So you would know why you need something like Redux. So let's do the same for the footer. So over here, I copy. Since we already have the channel name in the settings component, I copy it to the footer. I save. I hit Control click. I could hide this. Come on, where are you? Are you kidding me? Taking time. So I'll go to the footer here manually. Then I'll do the same thing. Channel name. Then over here, I could just change this to channel name. And also pass this. Later we're going to be getting this user through an asynchronous request. We're going to be using the fetch API to do that. Okay, so we passed it to the footer right now. Let's check and see. Cool, we have it in the footer over here. So we passed it from app to screens to settings to content. No, from settings to footer directly. So that's 1, 2, 3. We passed it 3 steps just because we needed it in the footer. So the final place I'll be making use of this particular state is inside this input field. So I'll head over to the settings because we already passed it down from app to screens to settings. So the value is currently here, as you can see, as a property. So inside content, what do? I'll just copy, paste it, head over to content. Content has 2 components inside it. It has the sidebar and the main. So this is the sidebar over here and this is the main over here. I just put it in one file so I wouldn't need to be creating extra files for this. And I use this as an example. You might not split it into a component if you don't want to. So over here, I do the same thing. And I'll explain why I'm doing all these stuffs manually. So from content, I passed it to main. From main, this is the main. I have channel name here. Then I want it inside the main. I want to use it inside this input field. So the value is going to be this. And one more thing, I just installed Visual Studio Code, so I haven't configured Prettier and ESLint. So I'm going to be doing this manually. So the value is going to be what? Can you guess? Yes, you guessed it right. Channel name. So I'll save that and we should see the value over here. So you can see Flying Hawk over here inside this input field. So let's do a brief recap once more. You can see what we're doing currently is highly repetitive. The reason I'm doing this hard way is that so when we start learning about a state management library like Redux, you'd be seeing how it makes life easier for you. So we passed Flying Hawk to screens, to settings, to content, then to main. Then we have it inside here. Cool. So that is how many steps? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 steps to get it into here. So cool. Do we need Flying Hawk some other place? No, we don't. So towards when I'm done with all the explanation, I'll talk about the disadvantage of doing it this way and why you need a state management library like Redux. And it will also give you a better understanding when we start learning Redux. So one more thing I want to do here is over here in this field, I want to be able to update the value of Flying Hawk over here. So since they are connected, I can be able to change it here and to reflect every other place. So we are managing our states using this manual approach. So where do you think I'm going to be able to set the value of Flying Hawk? Can you guess where can I be able to change the channel name? Would it be inside main? I don't think so. Why? Because that state doesn't exist inside this main. We just passed down the property as a value. So if I want to update the value of this channel name, I would have to do that where? In the parent component, which is app, because you can see the state exists here. So I'm going to add one more. I'm going to be making use of the second value in the use states hook return value. So I'm going to be creating a simple function, a handler function. I'm going to call it what? update. It's going to be quite long, but I'll just use it only here. Update channel name handler. I'm going to use the arrow function notation to actually do this. What do I want to do this? I want to set the channel name to what? To a particular value. Where do I get the value? I want this value to be passed as an argument to this function. So I'll pass it, I'll receive it over here, and I'll set it over here. So now to make use of this update handler name, update channel name handler, do you know what we're going to do? Yes, you guessed right. We're going to be passing it down the component tree the same way again. So I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it a shorter name now, update channel name, which is going to be equals to update channel name handler. So this is the property the screens component is going to have. So we set it here. So what this does is that whenever we call this function, it should get the value and set the channel name to that particular value. So we'll do the same boring monotonous stuff once again. So we've passed it down to screens. So we head over to, I'll just copy, oops, okay, I'll not be needing this, I'll just copy this. This is the property that screen is going to have. So I'll head back to screens over here, and I'll do the same boring thing. Then remember to receive the prop over here. So I'll save it, then I head over to settings screen. Where is settings screen? Where do we need it? We need it inside this particular component. And this component, the parent component, is content. So we have to pass it to this stuff again. Oh my gosh. And we have this error because we haven't put it as a value of the destructured prop object. So we have it in content, then we head over to content. Am I going to use it in content? No, main is going to be using it. So we, we do the same thing over and over again, just because we wanted to use this value down here. So now let's head over to main. Finally. So main is going to be the components that will be using this stuff. So inside the input field, I'm going to be doing an unchanged event listener. So it's going to be a function that will be executing, can you guess? Update channel name, and it's going to have a value. But how do we get this value? So from your basic React.js, you know that the unchanged event listener, or any event listener, has this value called events. So I'll just use E over there. So from there, we can have e.target.value. If you don't know how to get this value right now, just if you don't understand this code or what I just did now, just quit this video and go learn basic React.js, because this is the very basic stuff in React.js. So I'll save it. Yeah, Redux is not yet for you. So I'll save it and let's see if it works. Cool. Can you see? It works. Robocop. Cool. And now this value, this update channel name, this e.target.value that we are passing over here, that's the value of the input field. We are passing it over here, and it is going to be received over here as the value. That is why when we receive it here and we do set channel name to that value, it updates just like this. So if you've been following through, you would notice a pattern of repetition. So just because of I want to pass this stuff from the app component down to this navbar, I had to pass it through screens, through settings, down to the navbar. So after I'm done with this video, I'm gonna explain some disadvantage of this approach. So you'd see Redux as a messiah, because now we're doing this stuff in a very boring way. I want you to see how painful it is if you don't use a state management library in your complex application, in your very large applications. So that's why I want us to soak ourselves deep into the problem to see that Redux is going to be the savior. So let's go on. So I'm going to explain some stuff towards the end of this video, But one more thing I want to do is, let's say we want to also get a value from the internet. So we want to make an asynchronous call using something like the fetch API, because in your real world application, you'll be getting resources from, let's say, probably an endpoint, a RESTful API endpoint, or probably a GraphQL server. So I want to just quickly simulate that, because when we get to Redux, I'll be talking about middlewares. Don't be scared about that. We're going to understand what that means. And also be talking about Redux Saga. So I want to just have a kind of like a complete problem case before we head over to Redux. So I will just quickly do that now. Let me just copy the code. I don't want to do this, type it manually, because this is basic stuff. So I'll be making use of the use effect hook. Cool. I'll be making use of the use effect hook. There's no need for this. Okay, so I'll quickly create one more hook and I'll explain. Although this should be basic React.js stuff. So what's the name of the is loading, and the second return value is set is loading. So what's going to be the default value? I could leave it as true. You could leave it as anything you want to. So so I could quickly do a console.log to see if this works. Then set user is not defined. Okay, cool. We also need one more use. We need one more state. Set user. The user should be blank by default. Okay, cool. So you can see we have this stuff over here. So we're getting this value from an endpoint, this stuff from JSON placeholder, which is a freely available RESTful API service. So now, cool. So I just made use of the use effect hook and I added an empty array dependency. So which means this stuff would this hook would only be executed once whenever our application and our app components mount successfully. So I created a function here just to fetch user. So at the beginning, its loading is true. Then if it successfully gets the user, set is loading false. If there's an error, set is loading false, and console.log that error out. So now, even notice something over here. When we fetch the user from the endpoint, we set the user over here to user. So this user value would currently be the user being gotten from the endpoint. So now I want to be able to display the user in this navbar. So what do we do? The same boring stuff. So if you're tired, you could just skip this part, but that's just to show you that Redux or a state management library saves us from so many rubbish just like this. So I'll pass down user to screens. I save, I go to screens, and I pass it down to settings. I want you guys to also see a pattern here, because towards the end of the video, I'll ask you what you notice about the disadvantage of using these processes. So I'll go to, it will give me an error because I haven't added it to the destructured object. So same thing, I think I need to start copying this dude over here. Come over here. So I'll go to settings, and in the nav bar I paste it. Then over here I pass the user. Then cool, it should display. It should display here. Cool. Welcome, Leon Graham. So I could also make use of this is loading, so you could just see a spinner or something, or the whole site should have a spinner. But I'll leave you to do that by yourself. But we can see we have the value over here. And to get the value over here, we had to pass it down from app to screens to settings over here. But you might be asking, like, okay, I could have just implemented this stuff directly over here. But this stuff is the logged in user. We might not be needing it just in this settings component. We might be making use of it somewhere else, maybe in the screens or in some other component that is a child of the app component. So that was why I implemented it over here in the app component. So that's that. I'll be explaining so many benefits or the disadvantage of this method towards the end of this video. So just be patient, be patient, be patient. So the next thing is I'll also need this logged in user over here in the footer. Where do we have it? You know, we've passed it down from the app to the screens. And if I'm going too fast, yeah, you should also let me know in the comments section. So if I would slow down, because I see so many tutorials online where people complain that the instructor is too fast. Or wait, no, too slow. So yes, I'm fast this time around, but I just hope you get a hang of what I'm doing. So currently we have the user in the settings over here. So to pass it down to the footer, I'll just do the same thing. So I head over to the footer. And in the footer, oops, okay, lovely, we already have it. So logged in as Leon Graham, yeah. So now we've completed this application, let's talk about the disadvantages. Because I believe that some of you, or all of you, because I believe you're all smart, would have noticed some kind of like boring, repetitive stuffs going on here. So, and this is not really efficient for a software developer if you do the things this way. But let's talk about the problems right now. The first problem is prop drilling or deep prop drilling. So that is passing out props down through many different components till you get to where you want to use it. So we passed down, because we wanted to use Flying Hawk in this place, we passed it down through screens, settings, to navbar. That's 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. The same thing for here. We passed it through 4 steps. Screens, settings, content, then to main. That's 4 steps. Oops, what am I doing? Oh, lovely, you updated. We passed it down through 4 steps. The same thing for this. We needed to make get the current logged in user, so we passed it down from app to screens to settings down to the navbar. So one of the disadvantages of doing this stuff is deep prop drilling or prop drilling, because I want you guys to imagine a scenario. This is a very simple application, but I want you guys to imagine a scenario whereby you are creating, or your application is very, very complex. So imagine an application like Facebook. Do you think this is how they'll be passing props down from the app down to your chat bubble or chat box? I don't think so. So you can see so many things could go wrong. So for instance, since I'm copying and pasting or passing it down through like 10 or 15 hierarchies, I might misspell the value of this channel name. So if I misspell this, it would give us an error. So prop drilling is one of the disadvantages of this approach. Another disadvantage is passing through components that don't need the props. So I want you guys to also look at this. So from Flying Hawks to screen to settings. But you notice something? The screens component doesn't make use of Flying Hawk, and we can see it over here. Look at the screens component. It doesn't make use of this channel name. It doesn't even make use of update channel name. It doesn't even make use of user. So we just passed it down here. We added the code here. So we added, excuse me. So we added code that is redundant, that is useless in the screens component. But we just, because of the way React is structured, we just had to drill through the screens component to get to the settings component. So adding code we don't need here is not really a good thing, because at the end of the day, if there's a bug in this update channel name or channel name, it's going to affect this component. At the end of the day, the screens component is not making use of these properties we passed. So it's just like a channel, a doorway to just let this state sink through. This is not really a good stuff, because why do I put it here when I'm never going to use it? So are we getting some clues to why we need state management libraries like Redux. Definitely, we're getting there. So the third problem with this approach is you have a bulky parent component. So let's head over to the app.js. So you can see this is a very small application, and we already have all this logic here. We have the update channel name handler, we have this use effect hook that gets the user. So imagine if you're creating a very big application whereby you don't need to only get the user, you need to get the list of all the whole users, you need to get the sports they're interested to in, you need to get the list of logged in users, you need to get the list of I don't know, I'm going okay, you need to get the list of groups, the list of pages in this application, and we are going to share it in multiple places in our application. You would see that this app.js file is going to be very, very long, and it's going to be very hard to manage. So this approach of having a very, very bulky parent component is not going to be cool when your app scales, because as a software engineer, you also have to be thinking about scalability. If this works in a small application, if my application scales, is this going to work? Although you also have to be careful about early optimization. Optimizing too early can also be bad. But for this scenario, we're just going to leave it that way. So one of the third disadvantage is a bulky parent component. The next one is prop lifting. It's not really a problem, but what that means is still the same thing as the deep prop drilling. So let's see, because we are seeing value lifting, this e.target.value, we lift it up to where? Content. From content, it lifts it up to where? Settings over here. From settings, lift it up to strings, app, but that's just it. It's still the same thing as prop drilling. So imagine if our components hierarchy or the component tree was about 20 components deep. We would have to be passing these 20 steps down. Really not efficient. So the next one would be, let's think. Although you would also add some of the things you notice in the comment section and share, so I could also learn from you guys, because I might not get all the whole points out. But let's see. So not scalable, because passing props around multiple nested comps can become a nightmare. And I've proved that in this video where we just had to pass, we needed this value here, we just had to pass it through 4 steps. So imagine if your app was very, very big, it would be a nightmare passing it down through 20 steps down or 15 steps down. So the next one I think should be the final one, would be passing values to other components that are not in the same tree is complicated. Passing components that are not in the same tree. So for instance now, if settings had a value, or this, let me see, if settings had a particular value, and that value, settings component had a value, and that value you want to pass it to some other component that is not a child of the app component, how do you do it? So what that means is that you can't pass the value from settings to screen, from screen to app. You know this value over here in this input field, we passed it through state lifting or prop lifting. We passed the value of flying hawk from here to settings to screen to this. We passed it everywhere. You understand? But the next question is, what if this value we want to pass to is not a descendant of app? So for instance, if we have another component called app2, how do you pass that value there? Because the way React is structured, you either pass down or pass up. And these properties or values or states has to share kind of like a similar parent for you to pass it down or to pass it up. So if you have another app component, probably app2, and you want to pass the value of you want to pass the value of this channel name to that second component that is not a parent or a child, how do you do it? A naive way I could do that would be to use something like, local storage. So this flying hawk, I could save it in the local storage, then in my second app2 component, I could access it from the local storage. But that's quite naive, because you'd have a limit of what you can actually store in your local storage. So the aim of this video is just to prove to you guys, or to show you guys, that as your application grows, you're going to be needing, state is going to be a problem. State is always a problem when your application grows very big. So managing state this way is very boring tiring, prone to more errors, highly repetitive, and we can see it from what I've shown you, because one of the things I see, like most people having challenges learning stuffs like Redux, is because they see Redux as an overkill, or Redux has too many boilerplate. But I've just tried, I hope I've proved to you guys that doing stuff this way manually is not the best approach, because if your application skills, repeating this type of stuffs would be very, very boring. So that is what I'm going to cover in the next video. I'm going to talk about Redux and how Redux is going to tackle all this stuff. So the reason behind this is for you guys to see the hard way, which is this way we are currently doing it, and you'd see that Redux is the easy way to do it. So Redux will be coming in as a messiah, because you've seen that this current approach is quite boring. So I'm going to attach the disadvantages in probably the readme.md file, so you guys would just see the problems with this approach. So a brief recap: deep prop drilling, that is passing from this to this to this. It could be not, it's definitely not the best way if you are like 15 components deep. And also passing through comps that don't need it. I proved that the screen component doesn't make use of this channel name. So passing it through there is just adding more codes that could be error prone in the future. Another one is the bulky parents components, which I showed you guys. If your application is going to be doing multiple stuffs, you're going to be implementing everything here, because the children component might need it. Another one would be not scalable, because of passing props around multiple nested comps can become a nightmare. This is a nightmare for me. If this was my daily job to pass props this way, like every day for the rest of my life, I would hate my life. So which other one? Passing values to other components that are not in the same tree is complicated. So, which is just the last thing I explained before this recap. So I hope we've seen why doing stuff or managing states or passing properties manually can be a nightmare. And in the next video, I would explain the benefits of Redux and use Redux to solve these 5 problems we've seen in this application. So you now have, whenever you see a Redux code, you actually know the problem it is solving. Enough talk, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Bye.